Hello, and welcome to the Geek ETC podcast. I am Josh.
And I'm John.
And we welcome you into episode 3. This episode, we'll be diving into John's top 10 favorite video games. Last week, we went over mine, and we'll dive into what some of yours are. I'm excited to see what you got lined up for us.
I know, and I've been dying. It's been a whole week, and so I've not had a chance to... Obviously, I just wanted to keep talking that whole time and jump right into it. But God, that would have been like a 4-hour long podcast, which in the future, fine. But yeah, it's one of those things. Real quick, though, we started off with a lightsaber question in the last week's episode, if you remember. And the age-old question, I don't think I've ever asked you this. Who shot first, Josh? Was it Greedo or was it Han?
Well, I don't even know why this isn't a question. It's... Han just shot.
It doesn't matter. The real question is who missed? Because we know it's Greedo. That's otherwise the movie would have ended really quickly. Didn't George Lucas say though that Greedo shot first?
I thought there was something I saw or heard somewhere about that was mentioned.
People say Han shot first, makes him like the more like cowboy, maybe quote unquote manly or whatever. Right. But I think it would be interesting if really, because maybe he's known Greedo for so long, he just knows that he's garbage. He's got those big eyes. Maybe he's got a depth perception issue. He knew he'd missed the first shot. And so it was like, I don't need to shoot first because I know Greedo will miss. Right.
I kind of like that in my head, that my own mental image of Han Solo and what kind of character he is as a smuggler and a kind of like, space cowboy-esque type of thing. He's got that sort of swashbuckler, quick reaction time sort of gunslinger aspect to him is what I was trying to get at. That, yeah, he knows, even just from the hip, like, it doesn't matter what this, fool idiot does, or this alien guy, like, yeah, I can take him out, no problem, just from the hip, hit him right between the eyes. Yeah, even if he does shoot first. Maybe
Bosk or somebody, maybe he would shoot first or something like that. But Greedo, maybe he just knows, it's not that difficult of a guy to take out, because you can tell Han wasn't super, concerned.
Right.
I mean, he had a gun. The guy had the gun on him first, right? Why not shoot second? Because if there is any type of stormtrooper inquiry, of course, there wasn't really stormtroopers there at that point on Tatooine. Well, there could have been, but there wasn't as like a big presence at that point in the episode, in the movie. But it's just self-defense now. Really, it's a smart move for Han, and it's actually kind of a more tough move. It's kind of a little bit more. Who's the guy with the cigarette? Who am I thinking? The Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. It's a little bit more Clint Eastwood when you think about, I'm just going to let him miss, and then I'm going to pull out the DL-44 and really go to town.
And obviously, Han, I'm sure he's had many run-ins with the law in the past. And, I'm sure he would be aware, that on what steps to take to keep himself from getting in more trouble with the law. That like, hey, it's self-defense. He attacked me first, so I'm justified in killing him.
Yeah, it's just as Clint Eastwood Western to shoot second as shoot first. But we always recommend shooting first if you want to, because we don't know the depth perception of our enemies.
Of Rhodians.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, all right. Well, good. I'm glad that we got that out of the way, because I've been dying to ask you that. I didn't want to go on and on and on about it. Starting out with my top 10. So these top 10 lists are just kind of an intro to us as new podcasters. And we want you guys to hear from us what we like. And we also want to know what you guys like, and maybe things that we should know, maybe things we should play, because it is a big part of our lives. And so hopefully, A, you find something on one of our lists that you've never played before and you give it a shot, or B, you say, hey, this game is like X, and you send us that, and it's something that we find enjoyment out of, because it is a community. And if we see it like that, and we we see each other as community members, it'll be a lot more enjoyable time. So I started playing games mainly on PC. Never had a console or anything like that for a long time. Most of my gaming on console was done at friends' houses. Your house, when I was growing up in the Midwest, at other people's houses. Rarely, occasionally my brother would come home from college and we would rent from a local video game store called Hastings, or local electronics store called Hastings. We would rent a PlayStation 1, and the PlayStation 1 that we would get would we would get like an NHL game and then like an Army Man game, like the plastic Army Men game. Do you remember those?
Army Men Sarge's Heroes, I think is what one of them I played was called.
Yeah.
I think I had it on N64 or something. It was one of those Army Men games. That game was fun as heck, though.
There were some, and there were some that were like completely. I think Sarge's Heroes was different because it was like it acknowledged that you were toys, but some of the early ones were actually interesting because it was like, no, there's no people. It's just like the greens. And now that you think about it, it's a little racist, but it's like the greens versus the tans, and then you throw in some blue guys and whatever at some point, and those were a lot of fun. So that's a lot of my early times. This list is in no particular order for my top 10. Mm-hmm. And when I think about that couch co-op console type of thing, or even just early online, I think about me and you playing Halo 3.
Yes.
And so my number 10 is Halo 3. Halo 3 was so much fun. I remember part of the campaign, but honestly, it was the one that me and you, we always played. It was one of those things where we made those early like bonding moments in. We're saving each other's lives from bad guys. We're building things in the Forge mode.
Right.
We're building, we're creating our own things, playing those different modes that other people had. So much fun. There were specific matches that we can remember. There was the match that goes down in history where I was gunning on the Goshawk, right? And one of you out there might be one of our victims. I don't know. It's entirely possible because I had something like 50 something kills with no deaths, right? Something like that.
It was like 53 or something.
53-0, where Josh is just driving me expertly in the Warthog, and I've got the Gauss cannon on the back, and I'm just one shot in everybody. I can never replicate it again. We could never do it again. But in that one moment, we were perfect. And it's one of those things that you just always remember. And then, one of the favorite things about Halo 3 too was you would get those messages afterwards, that you would hear some of the in-game lobby, but when you would get those messages directed at you, that people would make those pictures and they would superimpose things on them. There would be the picture of the chief or, the arbiter or something like that. And it would be, you've been carried, or, thank you, or like, weren't there like Christian ones? Wasn't there like Jesus, like, hey, like, I remember seeing some that were like arbiter at the cross or something like that, yes. Out of, just weird times. And it was so much fun. And I don't remember there being that many like game lag online issues. Right. I remember just having a lot of fun, real, 3-lane gameplay. And playing SWAT with you back in the day. Oh, man, so much fun. So yeah,
those pictures were basically like early forms of meme pictures, essentially like early memes, that would get spread around just through the specific games online community that they had through their own systems and stuff that you would share with other players and stuff that people were just creating memes early on. But that map you reference where the Goshawk, it was a map called Standoff. It was actually a DLC map in the Heroic map pack. So it's a DLC map and it had like two kind of bunker bases across from each other, sort of asymmetrically. And there was a path that circled kind of figure 8 throughout the whole map that you could drive on you could take the Warthog and just keep circling throughout the whole map. And so we just did that for like the entire time, destroying everybody.
Yeah, and everybody just kind of wound up in that little circle reticle
Yep.
over and over and over again. And you know, it didn't matter what was the other big one with the Valkyries, and it was kind of a remake of the Halo 2 map. That one was so much fun too. You know, that was to me, when I think Halo, I think that map. I think of sniping in the rocks. I think of capture
Valhalla?
the flag, Valhalla. Halo to me is multiplayer on Valhalla, stealing the flags.
A remake of that wasn't really a remake. It was a new sort of take on like Blood Gulch.
Bloody Gulch, yes, from the first one.
Yeah.
And so that one to me is just so much fun. That's what I think of when I think of Halo. When somebody talks about online multiplayer games, that's also one of the first things I think of. And I'm sure a lot of people have that same type of, you know, reverence for that map and Halo 3 in particular.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, those, like, so many of those maps are just iconic. And that one, again, also really, it took the Forge mode and really expanded it, and being able to customize and make your own maps. And I remember people would make like obstacle courses and stuff that you'd have to, like, you'd try and, you know, essentially do platforming things to get through certain parts of the map and stuff. But they came out with, again, some maps they had like Sand Trap, which was a big desert map. And that one, you know, that one was the first one that incorporated the elephant, the big sort of mobile cruising thing on there. But they had like DLC maps that there was another sand one, Sandbox, which that was kind of after their Forge mode kind of really started to become advanced in the community, really started to go onto it. They made specifically a map called Sandbox that, you know, is what its name was. It was designed for just building custom stuff, and people made the craziest things on there.
And I remember, I think that was that map in particular. There was a lot of matches that were like Griffball and like, you know, all of those game modes, which were so much fun to get into.
But yeah, there was that, and even before that, it was Foundry. Foundry was kind of like in a warehouse with their shipping containers and all that stuff, and people would make Griffball and some other. They made like Duck Hunt and some stuff in some of those using those things. Like it was a very creative time in games, and for people sharing, you know, creative things that they've done in making these all new game modes, some of which, you know, eventually became developer made game modes in the stuff. Like Griffball later became a actual game mode in the stuff. And similarly to from Halo 2 Online, people had either SWAT or Zombies. You know, those were just custom game modes that got spread around from person to person, and eventually got so popular that Bungie just made them permanent game modes in the game.
Which, you know, good on Bungie. Thank you for taking that feedback, you know.
Right.
Talking about the Forge mode, I have to, this is an inside joke between Josh and I, and we're going to let you guys in on a little secret. And if you're out there, I am going to name drop. We're going to try to leave names out of this for the most part. But Josh and I were playing in Forge mode, couch co-op. And were we couch co-op?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, in Halo 3, you could be either a Spartan or an Elite. Those were the two options you had as a multiplayer. And typically Josh and I played as the Spartan, even though I think there was an issue with the Elite where it was harder to headshot, right? From
behind, because of how their back was arched and their head was lower. That became a strategy that if you were in an Elite, you know, you really had more cover from behind, so it was harder to snipe them in the head from behind.
Yeah, but we don't go back. We don't get shot in the back. We just run forwards. Josh and I do, and we get killed often. But I remember us in the Forge mode, and we weren't really doing anything. And I remember seeing Josh in his shiny blue Elite armor. And I realized Josh isn't normally an Elite. And I said, "Are you an Elite, Josh?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" No. And I look, it's some random person who we've never played with. I don't know who he is, named It's Sniper Zor was the name. Was this like 7-year-old kid was just in our game out of the blue in our Forge mode, and it was so silly, it was so wild, and it was such a joke. We're like, who is this person that just showed up there?
Because I was pretty sure, like, I was like 90% confident we were in our own like private match, just me and him messing around on the Forge stuff, and like, you know, one where like, you know, no one could join unless they were like a friend or someone on your friends list or something like that, and this guy just pops in, and he's not anybody either one of us know, and it's not on any of our friends list. or as far as we knew, wasn't a recent player, because that was another thing in Halo. You could just look at recent players and either friend somebody that did awesome, or you can send those memes to let somebody you played with know you carried them. But yeah, he just like showed up out of nowhere.
So it's Sniper Zor. If you're out there, let us know. Email us, geekytcpodcast@gmail.com. Say, hey, It's me. It's Sniper Zor. You should have let me stay in the match longer. Maybe we should make some merch for that, honestly, because that was one of the, it was kind of like a Where's Waldo type thing. It was just, he showed up. We had no idea why he was there. It was just one of those moments that to you people listening, it's not that funny, but at 2 a.m. in our, early or late teenage years, in Josh's bedroom, it was hilarious. We're like, who is this guy? Why is he here? And why does he sound like he's 7?
He was basically a virtual cryptid.
Yes, exactly.
Think about it, like a sighting of a Bigfoot. They're like, I swear he was there. He just showed up from nowhere. We don't know who he is, where he came from, and then we never saw or heard from him again.
Exactly, and it has remained one of those things where Josh and I, where we can't explain something, we will throw out it must have been it's Sniper Zor.
It's him. Yeah, if something unexplainable happened, it's Sniper Zor.
It's Sniper Zor. So talking about Forge mode, so that's my number 10. Halo 3, loved it, a lot of fun, multiplayer. It's one of those nostalgic things for me, especially me and you specifically.
Yeah, and one correction from last episode that I wanted to make about Halo 3. Halo 3 was where they added in where you could play as the Arbiter in the co-op things.
In the co-op mode, yeah, that's right.
I said that was in, mentioned that in Halo 2, but I believe it was Halo 3 where they, where the first player was Master Chief, the second one was Arbiter, and then if you had player 3s and 4 in the co-op campaign, there were just 2 other elites. There's a blue and elite and a red elite.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, they each had separate characters, which I thought was awesome, and I wish they did similar types of things. Like in Halo Infinite, if you had mentioned this the other day, that if you were doing co-op, the second player was just a Marine, or maybe like an ODST guy or something. Just something different other than just another clone of Master Chief.
And if I was in a cutscene too, that's another big thing. Is like now you're both couch co-op, you're both in the cutscene. That's kind of cool,
Exactly.
I want to see that. Yeah. So retcon Halo 3. I'm a monster with plasma grenades. Just remember it. If you run into me, that's what's going to happen.
Watch out.
Everything else, fair game, but I will stick you. I will get the kill after death.
Yes.
So speaking of Forge mode, getting into my number 9, Fallout 4.
Excellent.
Played New Vegas, played a little bit of Fallout 3. I was pretty psyched for Fallout 4. The announcement trailer, everything looked really neat. The game, beautiful. Watched it on other people playing it.
Yep.
It looked gorgeous. I really felt like I could RP in that game. And I remember buying it, getting it. The intro, phenomenal. The loading screen feels great.
That music that it starts, I remember literally like sitting on my bed. I think I just downloaded it digitally, and once it downloaded, I literally remember the moment of sitting on the end of my bed, looking at my TV, and starting this game for the first time and hearing that opening music and it panning across the power armor in the garage and stuff. And I remember we were getting like chills seeing. I was just like, oh, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, you knew at that point that you're like, oh, this game is A, going to be fun, and B, it's gorgeous looking.
Yeah.
And, loved it. I loved the brevity of the intro. I loved, it wasn't that important what you did pre going to the Fallout shelter. And then I loved the intro tutorial, crouch, sprint, change weapons, shoot, the normal FPS stuff was pretty quick and pretty easy. There was still plenty of stuff to find.
Yeah, this one was interesting too, because like the beginning was a little different from normally starting in a vault and, growing up in a vault or whatever, going through the, as a baby and then a young kid or, whatever that may be, that you start outside and you're just a normal family and stuff, and you exist before the bombs drop. And then as soon as they drop, you go into the shelter to begin with.
Yeah, and then you're cryogenically frozen, which I love that concept anyways. I love that, person from the past into the future, Demolition Man style, that kind of thing.
Right.
And compelling story. It makes you want to play it. Oh, baby taken, wife dead, ooh, I don't like it. But when you exit, yeah, it is nice that you come out of there and the world is your oyster,
Right.
a gooey radioactive oyster, but it is still an oyster nonetheless. And there's little pearls throughout there. The base building, phenomenal.
Yeah, that was a new mechanic that they threw that they didn't have in previous Fallout, so they added that in there, and that, again, added this whole other gameplay element that if you didn't even have to do it at all. I think my first playthrough, I didn't even touch the base building stuff at all, but yeah, if you're someone who's into that kind of thing, like, it's very diverse, and there's like electrical systems and all these stuff that you can put into it to make as crazy as a base as you want.
Yeah, I have a few playthroughs to it, a couple as the male character, a couple as the female character. DLCs were pretty good, but I remember, one of my playthroughs, I got really into base building, and there was an island that you could go to where you had to defeat one of the crabs. There was like a giant mud crab, or not mud crab. I'm interposing Skyrim and Fallout now, but similar thing. And there's this huge crab, and once you defeat it, you get this island essentially all to yourself. And it didn't get rated that much, and it was so much fun. And I spent this whole time designing this huge, like, multi-story building. Had a pretty high limit that you could go on, that you could build to. And I'm not, the difference between Josh and I'm a little bit more ADD. Josh tends to be a little more OCD. And so when it comes to building, Josh is a lot more neat and programmed with it, and it looks a lot better typically than my stuff. But I have an idea what I want, but I can't always come through with it.
Right. Anytime that there's any kind of base building things that we're both contributing to, oftentimes you're like, I want this, like in Ark, for instance. Like, you're like, I want a tower that like curves and has this stuff. I'm like, I'll build it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I'm not always good at doing that type of thing. But this time I did a great job. I had different levels. Like, the first level was like a kitchen level and with like a dining room. And the second level was like, hey, check out my power armor and that kind of my weapons. And then the third level was like a really crazy bedroom with like really cool stuff. And then the fourth level was like kind of an open air level, and with the elevator, and you could go up there, and I had chairs, and they had added things like there was like those it was after the Nuka-Cola
something or another.
The Nuka-Cola, the DLC, and it came out, and you had all these like games that you could play. So I have this nice stuff on top of it, and it just felt cool to RP there.
Nuka World
DLC, and it just felt so cool to hang out there. And I had these shooting targets out in the middle of nowhere that I could just shoot, and they would send up flares if I hit them. Like, they would send up fireworks. I had them like programmed for that, where they had, if I hit them, I know I hit it because it would send up like the sparkles, and that was a lot of fun, and I spent hours doing that, and I really, really enjoyed it.
That's cool, that kind of customization you could do with that, like having those targets shoot the flares up and stuff. I didn't know you could do that. Yeah,
you can load it, like, there was so much stuff that you could do to it, and I hope that the next one that they do is similar to that. Outside of Fallout 76, I hope Fallout 5, whatever it is, wherever it is, I can build again, and I don't have to build again if I don't want to. I think having the option to do both is amazing. But I loved the gunplay. I thought a lot of the weapons were pretty neat. Right. I love being able to create my own weapon. I love the customization of it. True. I loved being able to name my own weapons. That
was nice. Yeah, you could. They had a interesting weapon customization thing in that and stuff, like different pipe pistols and stuff, and the different attachments or like stocks and things you could put on them. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. I loved being able to update things. It's fun. Don't always use the meta weapons. Have fun with the things that you think look cool. Maybe they don't kill as good, but hey, have fun with it. And
again, I like the aspect too that game has a whole like melee weapon thing still in it too. That even though it's a future modern kind of thing, you can legit just use a sledgehammer the entire game if you want to.
Yeah, I did one with one of my female playthroughs. There was this one armor set that I would get that would look really cool. It was kind of like Future Ninja looking. And then in the robot DLC that they came out with to fight that mechanized guy or whatever. Automatron, yes. There was a specific headset in there that you could get that was a mask, and when you pulled your weapons out, it would close around your face, and almost Mass Effect style. And then when you were talking to people, it would open up, and it looked like a futuristic soldier mask, or like, a helmet. And it was my favorite. And I had her, and she was like my melee person.
Right. Yeah,
Very hard.
I never got to where I never actually completely finished Fallout 4, the main story of it. I fell off at some point due to something, but and because of that, I never also got to any of the DLCs for it. So that's something I would like to go back and check out again and actually finish the game and then check out those DLCs, because I've heard that the DLCs in like Far Harbor and stuff were all like really awesome.
Yeah, Far Harbor was crazy. It added some new weapons, and it added obviously a whole new area. And I liked Fallout 4 because there was some like modern, like normal lighting conditions. So you still had the scary radioactive storms, and you still had the radioactive areas, and you still had places that were dark and gross. But it also felt nice to be outside in a couple places, and it was kind of normal, and I could build my little shack. But in Far Harbor, it is very, very, very foggy, very dark, very like grim.
Really?
The entire thing. I think that's the whole nature of it, is trying to clear some of that up, I think.
So it's just I guess a harbor sort of more close. Is it like close to the ocean kind of thing?
It's an island, I believe, you go to. I think you go to a separate island is what it is.
The one thing that's awesome about Fallout, particularly maybe more so than, I guess Skyrim kind of had a little bit of it, but some of the random stuff you could come across were just like, some of it was like way off the wall, kind of weird NPCs or storylines that were just like very ridiculous, but sometimes some of them often pretty funny. But some of them were just like, you would not expect, like, this is what I ran into.
Yeah, there was aliens. There was bandits. Like if you killed one of them, you come across them burying their friend later. Like those kind of things, the little things that you can find. Those are the things that keep us diving back in. And I really, really enjoyed it.
There's, again, back to that, there's something different. Every time you play it, you find stuff you never saw before.
Absolutely. So that's my number 9 is Fallout 4. Excellent. If you've never played it, play it. If you know something similar to it, suggest it to me.
Very, very good.
My number 8 pick, and this is going a little off. This is going back to early PC me. This is Civilization 2.
I've never played any of the Civilization games, so that's a whole unknown world to me.
So Civilization 2 was the first one I played, and it was it's a turn-based real-time strategy game, right? Well, I guess it's a turn-based strategy game, quote unquote, with city building and very simplistic combat, but it has technology trees. It has all this stuff to go through. The one that I grew up with also had a bunch of additional they weren't mods necessarily back then, but they were like additional scenarios that you could put yourself in. So I remember there's one where you start out as, there was a World War II one where you could play one of the different, the battle lines were already drawn, the maps were already there, you could play as whoever, the tanks were already ready to go. You hit turn 1, and if you were the Germans, you started out with the Blitzkrieg essentially, and if you wanted to attack France, you could do it.
Wow.
And they had some different kind of like I won't say weapons, different types of units based on those. Mm-hmm. And then they also had some space ones where, you were being attacked by aliens and you could play as the alien empire.
Really?
It was actually kind of pretty neat.
It was that diverse of a timeline kind of deal.
Well, so these specific scenarios, yes, they were different ones. And if you played just regular old Civ 2, you start it up, you go for it. You start out with your one settler, you hit B, you build your first settlement, you start researching, you're building people, it was very 2D, and constantly researching. There was little huts you could go into with your troops. If you went into a hut, you might discover a language or discover a technology. You might discover another unit, or you might unleash a horde of barbarians, like 3 or 4 units that would just absolutely wipe you out.
Geez.
If you were early people and you came across that, and you put your one unit there, you lose your only offensive unit, and you've got 4 people wandering around your side of the map now who are just going to kill everything you have. It was pretty rough. And so I liked it because, you could name things. I could name every city. So if I played as the Sioux, or if I played as the Romans, it would auto-populate the city as Rome or whatever. But I could change the name of every single city if I wanted to. I could also change the name of my empire. So you could change the name of the empire pre-doing that. So I could come up with whatever I wanted to, which I like doing. So I would create my own empire, create my own names, and build up things from there. I remember I grew up in the Midwest in Kansas, and you could also build scenarios. And there was a little bit of a terrain sculptor, and it's very simplistic, 2D, very square-based. And I remember growing up in Kansas, I created the state of Kansas as an entire map, right? Which is super easy to do. It's mostly a rectangle with like a little chunk taken out of it.
It's not a super complicated state shape.
No. Yeah, there's a little chunk taken out of the top right. But here's the deal. I then went in and added a bunch of like Native American tribes in the different areas in Kansas. So I created this scenario where when I started it up, if I wanted to play as Americans, the Americans started here with these 2 cities, and then the Kansas Indians or the Wichita Indians or Native Americans, they started in these different areas. So it was kind of cool being able to create these scenarios, very simplistic for like a 8 and 9-year-old to do and have fun with. And the amount of fun that I had with that was a lot. And it was also one of those things, it was one of the only games I had to play. If I went to go visit my brother, it was one of the only games he had on his computer.
And it looks like it came out in 1996.
Yes, wow. It's old. And you can play it, on like, there's some of those,
like a ROM you can download?
ROM, you don't even have to download it. You can just, if there's websites. Play it in the browser. Yeah, play old games or whatever. You can go right into it. And, just a fun thing, just a fun game to play. And it was one of those early things where it got me thinking about strategy games, which is one of the things I've really enjoyed growing up.
Right, yeah, I just completely missed strategy games. Again, like most of those were on PC, like you're saying, and I never had a computer that could play any of that kind of stuff growing up. So I just completely missed out on that whole genre of strategy games.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, being able to nuke cities, being able to take bomb, nuke, and it would destroy the land around it where it was useless, so and it was easy to cheat. There was literally a button for cheats, and you selected like, create this unit, instant build unit, instant learn technology. So you could be running around with nuclear missiles while everybody else is in the Iron Age.
Oh my gosh.
And that was a fun thing to just goof around with too, and be like, what, if the Cherokee want to come at me, then I'm just going to nuke them into oblivion. And then also there was a space race. One of the things you could do was like build different components and then build a spaceship. And then once the spaceship was built, you could it would take years, and then the spaceship would reach Alpha Centauri, the next closest star, and you created a settlement there, and that was like one of the victory conditions, and that was a lot of fun.
That's nuts that it had like that wide of a gamut of like, I guess it's the name civilization, but the types of civilizations from like ancient stuff to completely modern space age things.
Yeah, and coming up there, obviously you would continue all the way through the technology tree. So if there was no crossover, there was no faction specific units like there is in the later Civilization series.
Okay, so there was a pretty diverse types of units and stuff that you could have in it.
Yeah, if you were a Sioux, or let's say you were the Persians, you could have legionnaires, right? Which, they would look like Roman legions. Right. There was just those specific units in there. Now, I think some didn't have access to every single one, or they started with things that were already advanced past that. But the faction-specific things weren't necessarily unit-related.
Right. Interesting. That's cool. Yeah, I never had a chance to play one of those, but it's cool that they had such a, even back then in '96, that they had such a diverse type of gameplay and stuff in something.
Yeah, Windows DOS, Windows 95, MS DOS, how easy is that to manipulate things on?
True. Very true.
One of my honorable mentions is like Command and Conquer, real-time strategy game, pretty fun. And I remember going over to my friend's house when I lived in Nebraska for a short period of time, and my brother would be playing Command and Conquer, and they had modded it somehow, or they had downloaded. I don't know how they did it back then, through disk or whatever. And I remember there being dinosaurs,
wow.
and they would have like the weapons attached to them that like some of the Sentinel towers and stuff had on them. It was insane. Yeah.
Is that where Ark got their inspiration from? Maybe so. But so my number 8, Civilization 2. Awesome. Very good.
And so, and at number 7, so speaking of old times, so I didn't have a console growing up, but my best friend next door to me did. And he had a PS1 and eventually got a PS2. And my buddy Austin, we would go over to his house and play, but his parents wouldn't let us play all the time. So we would play different games. I remember the old SmackDown games. We talked about those.
Yes.
And the customization there. We talked about the old Madden games because he was a big football fan. And one of my favorite games, though, was post Episode 1 Star Wars. There was a video game called Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. Okay. And it followed the Star Wars Episode 1 plot list, right? You start out in the Luther Hulk battleship in the Federation. And the cool thing about this is you got to choose your characters. So Qui-Gon Jinn was optional. Obi-Wan Kenobi was optional. But then there was also Adigaela, I think, Plo Koon, and Kiadi Mundi, and Mace Windu, I think.
Right.
Were all options. No, maybe Kiadi Mundi was not one. I think it was just Mace Windu, Plo Koon. But anyways, I remember seeing Plo Koon, and I was like, oh, that's my dude. So I went with Plo Koon. He had an orange lightsaber. He had some really cool moves. Each character had their power attack, quick attack, blocks, and everything. But they also had custom moves that you could learn and unlock and choose, And one of my favorites was, I remember that Plo Koon had one. It was, the top button on the PlayStation controls was the Y, or the triangle. Was the triangle. And I remember triangle was one of my favorite moves. It was a down slice, and then on the up slice, it was a power down, and on the power up slice, it would send people flying back.
Ooh, nice.
So I could throw them off of buildings or do whatever.
Right.
And
that's awesome.
My friend and I, we went through that so many times. I remember how difficult it was. And it was, going to Coruscant, going to Tatooine, going to all these different places, getting to all these different things, following the movie plot line, side scroller ish, but back then it felt great. Felt oh, this is super great technology.
That's awesome. I hadn't even heard of this, but again, I never had a PlayStation, so it never would have crossed my radar, even though this was a thing. Yeah,
it was so much fun to play with him, and it was one of those things that I was always jonesing for. And occasionally when my brother would come into town and we'd rent a PlayStation, I would rent that game as well to play with him. And we only beat it a couple of times because it was difficult, especially being probably second or third grade.
Yeah,
and
some of those old games like that back in the day, either Sega Dreamcast or Sega Genesis, or some of those early games like that, they were freaking tough.
Yeah, they didn't pull their punches.
No, I know a lot of people reference the freaking Lion King game. It's one of the toughest games ever made. Yeah. Definitely not made for children to try and compete. But yeah, a lot of those games were hard.
And one of the things about this one too is well, my buddy, it also made it bad because my buddy enjoyed dying. He liked playing Qui-Gon Jinn, and when Qui-Gon Jinn would die, he would go, ugh! "Ugh." And my friend, and it would frustrate me to no end, Austin thought it was hilarious every time it would happen, and he would get into these giggle fits, and he would die on purpose. And I'm like, come on, man.
Just to hear the soundbite.
Just to hear it. But there was really unique, like, droids that weren't in the movie in it, like some, like, souped-up B-1 battle droids. And
really?
Like, yeah, those kind of things. But there were a lot of cool things that you fought, you know, reflecting blaster shots. You could get like little power-ups that would make your lightsaber more powerful and longer or whatever. And then in the end, you know, you wound up fighting Darth Maul, right? You know, iconic Sith to me.
Dun, 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 dun.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and you get the cutscenes, and, you know, I wound up almost with like a perfect finish with my buddy where he went in first. I got trapped by the Raiders. He got killed, and then I came in and finished him off. And, you know, I'm hitting squares and double Ys, and it was pretty cool. I'm pretty sure I triangled him
into the pit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sick.
So yeah, that was part of my, you know, I would love for you to see that sometime. I don't know how we would play it on a PlayStation 1, but I think you and I playing that game together would be just amazing.
I'd be down for that. Like, yeah, because I mean, I played a good bit of Star Wars games. Like, there was like the Jedi Academies games, like Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Academy, or whatever they were. Like, those games, it was a similar sort of types of stuff, but I had so much fun with those sort of things. And like I said, you know, and one of my favorite games was Knights of the Old Republic. So those older Star Wars games, they just had a charm about them. You know, that new Star Wars game that had new Jedi Fallen Order, that's like the newest kind of Jedi game that there's been, that you kind of have that third person sort of adventure game where you get to slice people with a lightsaber and all that sort of stuff. But they haven't really had too many like that since back in the day. But back in the day, they had a ton of them.
But no dismemberment.
Right. Yeah.
Bring back dismemberment, Disney.
That's like the coolest thing about a lightsaber. It's how lightsabers work. If you hit somebody in the arm is gone.
The arm is gone.
Yeah. And not just with droids, you know, like, that's fine or whatever, but just, and like, you don't even have to include blood because it would just automatically cauterize it anyway.
Would it though? Well, that sounds like a question a good question.
Let us know your opinions. Would if you got dismembered by a lightsaber, would it automatically cauterize the wound? We'll leave that up to y'all.
So yeah, that's my number 7. You know, number 6, I'm going to kind of just gloss over because last week we talked about it as well.
Okay.
Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yes.
The old one.
Yes.
And we could go over that over and over and over again. The one thing we didn't touch on last week was the hero mode, which I really enjoyed on Tatooine. That was one of the ones I really enjoyed doing and was fun to play with other people, like versus. Right. I didn't enjoy playing versus against people when we were like in a regular, you know, campaign type setting, but it was fun to play against buddies in that kind of mode.
Because they had, like normally in any of the other modes, like the conquest modes or whatever they were, that if you had it turned on, then once you got a certain number of kills or after a certain amount of time, it would give you the option to spawn as a Jedi or Sith hero. You know, that could be Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Yoda, or on the other side, Darth Vader, Darth Maul. And then you could play with them for a limited amount of time. You had like a health bar that slowly drained. You could kind of refill it a little bit by getting kills to extend your time, but after a while, eventually it would expire and you would die and you could respawn. And, you know, that would, you know, throughout the match, you know, different people could get the opportunities to do that. But yeah, on Tatooine, on Mos Eisley map, that particular specific mode where it was just all the heroes all the time, and you pick any of the Jedis or the Sith or, you know, anybody that you wanted. And it was just a free for all kind of team battle between the two sides.
Yeah, that was it, and it could get wild too because you get like General Grievous and like Darth Maul just spazzing out inside of a building. It gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, and with those heroes and stuff, my favorite, like in my opinion, the best was always Darth Maul. Like the double-bladed lightsaber, and how he could like spin and like twist around and stuff. He could just completely like mow down everybody. I remember there was one of the levels that was like on like a moon.
Polis Massa.
That it had a bad, like, as you captured kind of a rush sort of thing, you captured the multiple points, and the last point that if you left, you know, it under enemy control, there was like the tightest choke point. And if you're Darth Maul, you could just stand there and just spin and slice and like kill like 30 guys at a time, and no one could get past it. And and that was you would get enough kills quick enough in that your health would refill faster than it would drain. So you could just sit there for like forever. It was very awesome.
Yeah, it would take like them hitting you with grenades and knocking you down. But yeah, that was an insane. I remember that map specifically for that reason, and that's the reason why I remember the name of it.
Exactly.
So just kind of glossing over my number 6. Obviously, that's Star Wars Battlefront 2. Loved it. A lot of fun. Very nostalgic for me.
Very awesome. Agreed.
And that gets me into another nostalgic thing, and so we're going back to PC gaming, and that's Rome Total War 2. And Rome Total War 2 is my favorite of the Total War series, but I grew up playing the I
guess to clarify, it's Total War Rome 2.
Okay, so I call it Rome Total War 2.
Yeah.
In this episode, it'll be called Rome Total War 2.
Just for the listeners if they want to look it up.
But the Total War series is a really fun game series, and I remember playing Command and Conquer, once again one of my honorable mentions, when I was younger. And in that game, you're playing with individual troops. You're clicking and dragging. They're moving not in formation or eloquently, and then you point and click for them to shoot stuff. My brother told me about this game. He said this Shogun Total War. Right? He told me it was Japanese, and you're commanding like company-sized elements of like 100 troops at a time or 80 troops at a time, and you're moving them in formation, and then so you're getting that classic battlefield X's and O's pushing the things across the battlefield, and then when you zoom in on it, you're getting that individual combat feel to it, and so you get more of that tactical feel, and so I played Medieval Total War, which was, could also be on my favorites list. And I loved it because, you got this overview map of the world with these essentially chess-like pieces on it. And they control generals or commanders or whoever. And you have some like nation building and technology trees to go through, and you build troops, and there's some element of like resource, not gathering, but you have to have the appropriate buildings to get different types of troops. And you could also assign titles to different commanders and everything, which I really liked in Medieval Total War 1. But you move these chess pieces around, and then you would hit end turn, and the other during that same turn, everybody else is moving their chess pieces around. And if you get into combat, it goes down and it goes live into it. And you get to, pre-plan your military, strategy. You get to put your people where you want to put them at. You have to deal with like reinforcements. You have to deal with sieges. So much fun. Yeah,
that's really cool. And with Rome 2, you kind of introduced that to me a couple years ago. And I had never, like I said, I'd never played any of these RTS games or any of this kind of stuff like that. And then you told me about this, and I checked it out, and we played it a little bit. And at first it was like, it seemed really complicated to me, a lot of systems to manage, this and that, and it seemed a little overwhelming. But after getting through it just a little bit and kind of understanding how it works, like it was simpler than I thought. And once you get into it and you get some troops built up and start to make some armies and start to conquer some of like Europe there and some of the regions and the countries and stuff, like you really get into it, and it gets really addictive.
Yeah, we had battle plans. We had like, I like that I can name my army. I can name it First Army or Imperial Army or Royal Guard or whatever I want to. I can put the different types of troops I want into it. And with you, it was a lot of fun, A, introducing you, and then B, getting you into it, like getting starting near each other and helping each other out and having these co-op battles.
Right.
But we even discovered that you could loan me units.
That wasn't like to way in the game. We found out that if you got into a battle by yourself, that was even the cool thing in general, is that we could do essentially a co-op campaign and work together to conquer, that part of the world. But if you got into a battle by yourself, for I don't know how many hours we spent, and we just have to, we were just sitting there waiting for the other person to finish the battle. And they're like, wait, what does this button do? And it turns out you can just, lend a troop, and you can control one of your other the other players' troops inside the battle.
Yeah, you can control like an entire unit of soldiers or multiple units of soldiers, and it's less micromanagement for especially you when you were getting used to it. You loved giving me the cavalry, and
Right.
I would just come hammer and anvil them. And so Rome 2 takes my spot because it's pretty, it's easy to learn. I love the historical nature of it, and you can still find a lot of people playing competitively in these tactical gameplays, where they're having these big siege battles, and there's always some new tactic to try.
Right.
And then the mod community for it has done a lot of fun. There's two different mods in particular. There's one that makes, adds different factions and really makes the units larger and historically accurate, even give them the same names. And then there's a medieval one that kind of turns it into like a medieval Total War 3, and that makes it a lot of fun. And it's a complete overhaul, and it looks like a AAA produced game.
Yeah.
And, I love those games to just veg out. I don't have to take it seriously.
Right. And because it is kind of turn-based, and you can kind of pause the gameplay and think about stuff, like you can literally just kind of relax into it, and like you don't have to feel pressured to do stuff. You can take it at your own pace, the battles and stuff, and just kind of sit back and watch it, for 10 minutes, watch the battle happen its own way and just enjoy that.
Yeah. And it's a time machine too. It's one of those games. It's a time machine where, you and I would play,
Right.
And a few turns later, we start at 9:00 in the evening, and it's 1 a.m. and we didn't realize it.
No, you're like, where did the time? We did like 2 battles, and now it's 1:00 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those things, like if you want to take up time and you want it, quality time, and I can talk to you about things, and we can just hang out, and then also, really have fun. Like if you like strategy games, you got to give the Total War series a try. I've not played around with like the Warhammer versions of it. It doesn't look like it's my cup of tea necessarily, but I really hope they release a medieval Total War 3 and, really get after it. And there's been other titles since, but I think if you were ever going to try a Total War game, Rome 2 is where you should start.
And that's what I'm saying. It came out in 2013, but honestly, like it aged very well. Even that's been almost a decade ago. Like because of the gameplay and how it operates and stuff, like there's nothing about that game that doesn't make it completely playable still today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super playable. The mod community is great. So even if you get done with it, there are campaigns you can play, which are more limited. So you can play those historical campaigns, which are normally quicker. I'm a grand campaign, pick your people, go from there type of thing. And then, but being able to play multiplayer is huge. It's so much fun.
Very much so. Yeah, I have enjoyed that. I definitely want to run through another campaign of that at some point.
You know what? I do too. We should do that.
Well, we'll do that then.
That's my number 5, our RTS or strategy game, Rome Total War 2. And then sticking with PC, and one of the first real PC shooters that I got into that was something I was excited about. I would watch videos on, but I never had a computer that I felt could run it. And then I did, and then I got it. And
It's a good feeling.
That is Squad. And Squad is one of those games that, to me, it really just bumps up the fun factor. Mm-hmm. And the console community is pretty, everybody makes fun of the Modern Warfare 2 lobbies and all that kind of stuff, but in PC gaming, the lobbies are actually pretty chill. Their people are helpful. So I remember getting into Squad, and then people said, "Hey, if you're new, just ask for help." And so Squad is a game that takes place. It is a 50 on 50 game. Mm-hmm. It is ticket based, very similar to a Battlefield game. And there are vehicles. There are non-attack helicopters, or transport helicopters. There are different factions. Mm-hmm. You have your U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Army, British Army, Canadian Army. You have an insurgent faction. You have more of a Chechen faction. You have Chinese now. Mm-hmm. You have Russians and like an Iranian type faction.
And that's the cool thing, is every one of those has like real world representations and unique things of weaponry, vehicles, outfits. Like all of it is all, based off real world equipment and stuff that is being used by those armies today.
Absolutely. And the thing is too, so, you to be part of this, you can't just go play on your own,
No.
It's called squad for a reason. To join, the servers are pretty well manned by admins. You get into it, you pick a squad. Yeah. You get into a squad. You become a squad leader yourself, or you get into a squad. And the squad leader is actually important because they actually have a role to play. They do a bunch of different things. And a good squad leader makes or breaks the gameplay for you.
And something about this too, like, yeah, if your team is going to be victorious, like, you can't just run in there, rush in, run and gun, like, kind of overpower stuff. Like, you have to kind of plan your routes of attack on the different points that are being captured and kind of use some strategy between the different squads and units to really accomplish the overall goal.
100%. And so there are different classes that you can have within the squad. There are different squad roles, and the size of the squad also depends on what squad roles you can get. And some squad roles, there's only a couple of them available for your entire team. Like if you have a heavy anti-tank kit, that's only available to 2 people out of 50. So if you are a new player, don't pick that up, right? Because that's an important role that we need to get to somebody that knows what they're doing.
Each role is important, and you kind of have to cover your bases as far as like what units you have and stuff. And like it's important to, like, if you've got a squad of 6 people or something, like, you need to have a medic, to be able to revive people. You need to have an anti-tank person in case you come across a tank or a transport truck or something like that. Like, you have to plan out your squads to cover all your bases, because if everybody's just a rifleman and runs in, then, it's typically doesn't work out super well. You could get ambushed by a tank and then no one can take it out.
Yeah, the game is fairly realistic. The weapons are not, the weapons are a little bit over recoiled, but other than that, like, it emphasizes single shot shooting. It emphasizes if you have a bipod, use it. And if you have, the fact that you can use mortars and you can build emplacements and you can build a little base, at different points, it's a lot of fun. There's logistics to it. There are people that drive trucks the entire round and they have fun with it. And it is interesting because you are one of the targets. You get hit with a rifle once or twice, you're down. If you get tapped in the head, you're down. You don't know if you killed the person sometimes, unless you see them fall.
There's a very fast time to kill.
Very fast time to kill, and you don't know how many kills you have till the game is over. And I like that to an extent, because it would be horrible if you were playing a mortar thing and you were, doing it forever. And maybe it is kind of bad, if you're playing mortar gameplay and you didn't get any kills. But hey, you don't know if you're suppressing them. You don't know if you're denying something to them. There's all kinds of stuff. And the armor gameplay is something differently entirely, because the points matter where you hit them. Almost, World of Tanks-esque. The armor is different in different places. You have to, if you're a person with a rocket launcher, the rocket launchers go for hundreds of meters. They're accurate to real world somewhat. So they're not like, it's not like Modern Warfare 2, where if you have an underbarrel grenade launcher, it's going to go 20 meters max. No, you're talking, you can go 300 meters. You can zip them in there. And king of grenades here. If I get you with an underbarrel grenade launcher, you'll know it.
Yes.
But, one of those, this is just an early thing for me, squad. I remember playing as a light anti-tank kit. And
meaning that they have like a smaller sort of, rocket launcher of some kind.
Yeah, not one to take out a tank necessarily. It can take out lighter vehicles if you hit them in the right spots. But, it's more like you're there to be an annoyance type thing. And I remember playing as that lat kid, and I was by myself, and there was this tank that was just absolutely destroying everybody. I was a new player, and people are running by me, enemy soldiers everywhere, and you can't take them out. Like, there's no, I can't jump up and shoot them before they kill me. And this tank is just wiping out everybody. And I remember sitting there, and there was one guy near me on proximity chat. He was a heavy anti-tank. He's like, if you can just take a Thrax out, I'll kill it. And so I waited and I waited. And you can't shoot it close. There's an arming distance, just like there is with real-world weapons, where if you shoot point-blank range, you're not going to kill it. and I let it go just far enough, and I hit it in the tracks and spun it out, and that dude hit it in the butt with his tandem round and sent it flying, and the whole team, my squad leader, was excited. And it's just one of those things, like, you know, I only got a few kills that round, but that feeling of elation that I got for that one, I didn't get the kill count for it, but I tracked it, I took it out, and that made me feel happy.
It's that contribution to the overall thing, and literally, it's one of those games too that literally, like, taking out one tank can make or break the taking of a position and stuff. Like, it makes you, each role holds a big individual importance in the game.
Yeah, so, you know, it's one of those games where, like, if you've got an itch for a tactical shooter, you know, and you've never played a PC game before, like, I show people gameplay of it, and if they're a console player, and they're like, man, that is so crazy. They've never heard of it before. They've never seen it. And the shenanigans that you get into, you know, the player base, sometimes they get tired of it, right? You know, they're or whatever, or they think that things aren't being released enough, but they do a good job. Like, they just released the Chinese faction. It's completely different than everybody else, completely new stuff. Yeah. And they release maps pretty regularly. Overall, I don't have that many issues with the game at all.
Yeah. And it's one of those games too, like, because of the maps and stuff and how big they are, like, talk about a game that is never the same thing twice.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're never going to have the same, like, battle or same experience. Even if you play the same map 100 times, it's going to be way different every time, depending on who you're playing against and what tactics they take.
Yeah, and, you know, who you're playing, because some people have some pretty unique things, you know, like, you know, you can set a tow missile somewhere, you know, with anti-tank guided munition, you know, like, or, you know, wire guided.
Right.
And you can set up, you know, you could have a guy, and they'll create their squads. They'll tell you what kind of squad they want to be. Like, hey, we're going to be an infantry squad. Hey, we're big bugbaloo, big boys, which have fun. You know, you can join that squad and just goof off. You know, you get in a helicopter and somebody's playing Fortunate Son through the, you know,
through the chat proximity
through the proximity chat. Like, that's the thing. You know, there's a setup lobby. There's all kinds of, you know, there's really fun game modes. So I encourage you, if you're a console player and you've never tried PC gaming, I think the two go hand in hand. I don't think you have to choose, and I think you should try Squad out if you're trying a real tactical shooter, because it is a lot of fun. It's got a good community. Join one of the servers that says new player friendly. Tell them, hey, I'm new, what do I need to do? And just play, have fun, and you know what, everybody will welcome you. It's completely different than the console. Right. And go into my console version of that. So that was my number 3, or sorry, that was my number 4. Number 3 is Battlefield 3.
Ooh.
So Battlefield 3, I remember playing Bad Company with one of our old friends, and at his house one time. I think you were there, or maybe not. Anyways, I remember playing it, and the destructibility.
That was the coolest thing about Battlefield that other first-person shooters did not have, is the destructibility.
And I remember fighting a guy. I had an M416 with an underbarrel grenade launcher.
There we are again.
And I was shooting a guy, and I remember I killed him with the last bullet in my magazine. I had nowhere to go. These people were advancing on me. I turned around and blew a hole in a wall to a building because there wasn't a door close. And I ran through that and got escaped. And I remember thinking, wow, what an interesting thing. And so when we got into Battlefield 3 and we played that online especially, it was so much fun to play with you. The different classes, the sniper, engineer, assault, and what was the other one? Heavy?
I don't remember.
There was like a heavy, like there was one that primarily had like light machine guns or whatever. The maps were all super fun. The sniping was amazing. The armor and helicopter and plane gameplay was all really fun.
Yes.
And the like level up system for all the weapons, easy to do, a lot of fun. And the campaign itself was a lot of fun. You know, you're just invading Iran as a Marine. That was awesome. I'm not saying the U.S. should invade Iran, but it was an interesting like storyline, and I think that campaign was one of the best campaigns I've played in a while.
Yeah, when it comes to first-person shooters, they typically, you know, the campaigns are sometimes they're weaker, that's not what a lot of people play them for. I mean, some of the like Call of Duties and stuff have had pretty good game. It's basically like playing a Michael Bay movie.
Yes.
But, just high action, big explosions, stop a terrorist from blowing up the world kind of thing.
But personally, like in those campaigns where I'm able to single shot, I'm trying to turn an M4 or an M16A4 onto single shot, and I'm able to just my own pull the trigger, tick, 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 away. That feels good to me.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of thing. And Battlefield had that. It had that in the multiplayer, it had that in the campaign, and it had that with the armor gameplay. I think, is that the game where was it Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4 where you had that super long sniper kill?
Ooh. I think there was the same map in both of them. There's a big desert, the oil refinery map. There was like two big mountains on the two sides of the thing, and then a big oil field in the middle of it. And I was on the top of one mountain, and I saw a guy on the top of the other mountain. And yeah, that's one game that, like, a thing in that game that I haven't been able to duplicate in other games is, if you got a headshot on somebody with a sniper, it would tell you how many meters away it was. And I did one on there. It was like 960 something meters, which it had like a second of travel time with the bullet drop. And so that was, that's one of my most satisfying gaming moments for sure.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you do it, it feels great. I don't think Battlefield 3 had hardcore mode, but in the later editions, Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1, which I also super enjoyed, the hardcore mode where it didn't tell you killed him, but if you had a headshot, it made a little noise, a little ting, and like you heard the little satisfactory kill noise. That was a blast, and I remember just going up with you in Apaches, and us double teaming it, me on the gun or you on the gun and me flying and unlocking those things and getting excited to unlock the next thing for the Apache helicopter or the next thing for the tank, and running it as a team of two and really getting into it. And we're able to kind of like really scope out our own thing. Like, hey, me and you are going to do this round.
Right. And that was that particular instance you mentioned of the Apache. We had a similar experience harking back to the Goshawk event in Halo 3, where we were on a map just both in an Apache and just destroying the other team, like 30 or 40 kills or something, like just in one match.
Yeah, and never shot down once.
Yeah. We just stayed in the helicopter like the whole time and just constantly destroyed them. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Yeah, I was in the gunner, and we were just wiping them out. And it just one of those things, everything was perfect. Everything wound up perfect. And, it's one of those things that's like, it is a core memory or whatever that pops up. It is silly when you talk about like, well, it's a video game or it's pixels or whatever. But it's more to it than that. Yeah. It's a dopamine thing that pops in our heads. It was a serotonin release that I got for doing this thing, and I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
And on top of that, like it's a memory that not only you have by yourself, like, but me and you both share it together. Like that's a memory we both have of a time we both were hanging out, having fun. And to me, that's important. Like it's good to have those kinds, even if it is in a virtual world in a game or something, you're creating fun memories with your friends and stuff.
Absolutely. It was Battlefield 3. It was amazing. Battlefield 4 was amazing. Battlefield 1 was amazing. The Bad Companies were amazing. Battlefield 5, I did not enjoy the new gameplay. I didn't play it. And then obviously the new Battlefield was something you and I couldn't do.
2042.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just had too many bugs at the time. They may have improved it and they may check it out later, but when it came out, it was not working.
Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, that's it for me.
Those were amazing.
So that brings me to my number 2. And you talked about it briefly as one of your honorable mentions, and that's specifically for me the Mass Effect series, but I'm going to focus on Mass Effect 1.
Okay. Yes.
So Mass Effect 1, I talked about it in episode 1 a couple weeks ago with you, and it was one of those things where I almost couldn't figure out how to play it. So idiot moment for me, I couldn't figure it out, and I was really confused because there was like one point where you had to go down this path, and I could never find the path, and it was just a dummy moment in the first mission. And then once I did, I never wanted to get off of it.
Yep.
And I had so much fun, spent so much time, and you get to just designing a character and then getting to pick one of the 3 backgrounds that you get to pick.
Oh, right. Like you have like War Hero or Spacer
or Soul Survivor.
Soul Survivor, that's right.
Right. And those carry over to all 3 games. Mm-hmm. And, I think the first one I chose, the War Hero, because I was, whatever. And, it was one of those things where it's like, I'm guns blazing, I'm doing all this stuff. And then I remember going through and playing like a Soul Survivor one, and I went with more of a bionic or whatever. Biotic.
Yeah.
Pathway with that one.
Yeah.
Like I was a Soul Survivor, and I was a little bit more in tune with my psych stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And just completely different playthroughs, completely different things. Starting out, you start out as N7, Special Forces guy, which is really cool, right? That's what you are in a lot of video games. And, you get to choose your human race, you get to choose what you look like, decent character customization that carries through to all 3 games. And you, then, I think the voice is the same the whole time, right?
There's a voice for male shepherd
and female shepherd. And then you choose your first name, but your last name's always Shepherd. Mm-hmm. And that way you're always Commander Shepherd, which is fun. Good on them.
It works either way.
And so once you actually get into it, you beat the first level, you've got your ship, and you're able to go to these different places. It's one of those other things where you can go kind of where you want to go. Yeah. You kind of have a starting point. And, the lore, like I really enjoyed, like they had it to where there was no ammunition in the first one.
Right.
Mass Effect 1, there was no ammunition. They had it, and they had it in the codex. Why do you don't have... There was overheating issues, right?
Yeah.
Which posed a problem, but it wasn't something you were having to constantly go around and pick up ammunition. And it made sense. It was like, hey, this is why ammunition is not an issue. Now, Mass Effect 2 and 3 changed that, and I hated it because then I'd always run out of ammunition. And... that was silly, I thought, in my head, but hey, I didn't design the game, so.
Yeah.
But Mass Effect 1, just the choices you make, and there are choices you make even at the end, that you can't always make the right decision. And there's not even a best decision sometimes. Sometimes, in Mass Effect 1, you get the choice of whether you're going to save that ship, or do something else, right? Mm-hmm. You get to choose between the Senators or whatever.
Right.
Right, I think it is. And that affects Mass Effect 2. It affects Mass Effect 3. And it's wild to think about. That affects how the overall story arc goes for Mass Effect 3, because you might not get enough resources if you let them die or whatever.
Right. It's one of those things like when you play through the first time, you didn't really think too much about the decisions because, it was what it was. But when you learn and find out like that stuff carries on to 2 and 3, then if you play through 1 again, you're like, every decision you make, you're like, oh, it's what should I choose on this? Is this going to change something in 2 or 3? And you kind of, it adds more weight to every decision you make.
Yeah. And, in Mass Effect 1, there was a little bit greater customization with armor and weapons than there are in the other ones, which I liked. I thought that was really interesting. So you start out as this N7 Marine. You're working for the Earth. You get put in this special position, and you start going on these missions. It's cool to have that kind of like status as a Spectre. You get that Spectre status, and eventually you start getting able to purchase those weapons and stuff. You get those really cool guns.
Yeah.
But everything in the game was so well done. I loved all the dialogue. I loved the simplistic dialogue where it was like kind of like, hey, goes kind of in this manner, but it doesn't spell everything out that you say, you do say everything. You say a lot more than what it says. You can punch a reporter in the face. Who doesn't love that? Man, it's just so much fun to play through. It's so like you build these, got your buddies, you've got your, you're taking on missions. You get to bring 2 of them with you on missions,
right?
And one of them's going to die in the first one, whether you want it to or not. One of them's going to die in the first game, and then it has the option for 2 or 3 to die. I think in the first game,
yeah,
for sure 2,
yeah.
And then in the second one, like we talked about before, you can lose all these people that you put all this time into.
Yep.
The third one, you can lose even more. You can lose entire planets. It is
It's a very consequence heavy game, like based on choices you make and stuff. It really can change. Again, that's one of those things, like even though you can play you play the game through 5 times and have different experiences every time.
It is the game that's begging for a movie to be made, or something like a series, a really good mini series or series on HBO, or something where it's well done, thought out, timed well. And it's one of those things that, to me, it's a sci-fi classic. If we saw it in other media, I think if people that saw it that were outside of video games, if they just saw the drama, if they heard the dialogue, if they felt the character connections, I feel like it'd be one of the best. It would be like a Game of Thrones series, essentially, where people would be it would be a fan, like a cult classic.
Right. Well, in many games that I've played, particularly like space, future sci-fi games and stuff, it has some of the most interesting things in it as far as like characters and races and technology, and like the political structure of the different races in the soul and the galaxy and stuff. Like just how all of the stuff that they've made in that game, it's all very, very interesting. And so like none of it seems super bland, like down to the Krogans with the genophage kind of stuff, and they're suffering from this like, or lack of fertility, so like they can't, like their species, them as a species can't replicate and stuff, and so that's like a whole thing that they're trying to figure out.
Yeah, you have these giant berserker things who want nothing more than to die in battle, but if they die in battle, they're literally killing off their species because they can't reproduce at a rate sufficient to do anything.
Yeah. And
it's nuts. And that warrior culture issue that you have with them, and like the honor system, and then the choices you have later on. What do you do with the, where you can reverse the genophage, I think, correct?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, potentially.
Or not. And you make those choices. And, and the third one, the things that you've done in the first 3 determine the allies that you have to fight off these, I guess the overall threat, which is the Reapers, right? They're these sentient AI ships that have existed for millennia, and they come in to essentially wipe advanced species off the face of the planet once they reach a certain level of progression. And eventually it's a losing battle, but you make some headway, you get an ending that maybe you like or maybe you don't like. I remember watching videos because there is like a heartstring to it. When your Mass Effect 1 character you played with, you put like 100 something hours or more in. Mass Effect 2 just as many, and then Mass Effect 3 you're going into it and you're seeing like, these are the endings that you can have, and you're like, oh man, I really want this one. And you're having to watch things just to make sure you do everything right. And you know what? Maybe you messed up in Mass Effect 1 and you can't get it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't get it, so you just got to go with whatever you think. And it doesn't really spell everything out for you, which I like too. A lot of stuff is open for interpretation. But from the outfits to the character customization, the weapons, the gunfighting, the kind of special powers that you can get, biotic powers, which are pseudo telekinetic, pseudo Jedi-like, all these things that you can do and get, it just makes it such a unique game. Like I remember playing, I think it was in the first one, where you're playing against, you're on like a asteroid or something like that, and you're moving fast. I know for sure there is one where you're on a ship and you could toss people up. There was a power that you had that you could lift people in the air and slam them down.
Yes.
But if you were when you're on the ship, you would lift them up in the air, and I would do that to lift them up and slam them down on the ground. But because we're moving
through
space, as soon as I lifted them up in the air, they were gone in the slipstream.
Yeah, they just
and I was
disappeared.
Like, whoa! So then I'm picking up dudes left and right. Then because instead of the slam effect that sometimes killed them and sometimes didn't, I'm sending these dudes all into
empty space,
another universe.
Yeah, I did the same thing. That was super satisfying to just lift them up and they just disappear.
Yes, so much fun.
It was
so
awesome.
Much fun.
It was so awesome.
If you've never played the Mass Effect series, Xbox is where you get it at, and that's the place to go. And if you're a PS junkie or whatever, and you pick up an Xbox 360 or whatever, or Xbox One, and you can pick one up for cheap now that the Series X is out, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it just to play through. It's worth it's so much fun, and it is one of the premier games ever for me.
Yeah, they are. It is also on PlayStation and on PC and stuff too.
Well, take everything I just said back and don't spend any extra money and just buy it and play it.
And they did just last year, or I guess, we're now in 2023, so 2 years ago, they came out with the Legendary Edition, which they remastered 1 through 3 and put it all in one package.
Yes.
And that's definitely the way to check it out.
Which we both have.
Yeah, so now's a good time to dive back into that and check it out if you haven't.
And honestly, obviously a lot of geek things are male tuned or whatever, but my wife, who doesn't play video games that much, she really loved Mass Effect.
Right, you mentioned
because
that.
she wouldn't go on the side quests, but she loved the linear story that she would love. She would just go from mission to mission. And it's probably one of the only games that she's finished like everything. She finished Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. She finished all 3 of them. She really enjoyed it, and it was cool me watching her play it.
Right. I mean, yeah, my wife was also doing a playthrough of she beat the first one and then had just started on the second one and stuff, so she hasn't finished that, but I know she plans to. She really enjoyed it though.
So if you are a guy or a girl or whatever, and your girlfriend or significant other or friend or sister maybe is looking for a game and they're geeky oriented and they like sci-fi, Mass Effect's the way to go.
Yeah,
I think
if you're into sci-fi stuff and like good stories and different relationships with the characters in games, definitely check out Mass Effect.
And for my final one, for the final game,
yes,
Mountain Blade Warband. So this is a game, I remember being on Steam on the PC and just searching for games. And I came across this one, Mountain Blade Warband. And I remember reading a review and it talked about you defeating these troops and hearing all your people scream, hurrah at the end. And it had so many good reviews. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to check it out. I'm going to try it. I'm not really good at these type of games, these like hack and slash games, but we'll give it a try. And turns out it wasn't at all what I thought it was, so it turned out to be the biggest sandbox experience I've ever had, where in the vanilla game, Mountain Blade Warband, just regular vanilla, no mods, you start out, you create your person, you specialize in some stuff here and there through your character creation. Maybe you like kind of like say, hey, my background, I'm good with bows or whatever, or I'm good with a sword, or I rode these are the things I did in my childhood. Mm-hmm. You start out on this huge map and the world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. You can become a lord, you can become a merchant, you can become a king. And that was what was so interesting to me. I have all these different character playthroughs. I have all these different armor. You start out, you're this little dude on this huge map, and there's little pieces moving on the map real time as you're moving, and it shows how many people are in their party. And there's bandits and soldiers and armies and lords and kings, and you can become one of those. You can recruit troops, and you have almost Total War-esque battle planning, where you're now fighting in large-scale battles, commanding troops to move to certain places, to hold fire, to do whatever, and fighting on horseback and coming through. And the fighting is just so seamless. It makes sense. It feels so good, the way that everything works out. And then the vanilla is great. It's graphics wise, it's a little lackluster now.
Yeah,
if you were just like, I'm gonna listen to John and go try it out. But the mods are what makes it.
Okay.
And specifically, even if you're not a Game of Thrones fan, the Clash of Kings mod is what absolutely blew it out of the water to me. It puts you on the Game of Thrones world. It creates both continents, Essos and Westeros, the factions that are on both. Every unit is unique to those different factions, and you can just join an army and just fight as a foot soldier. They'll give you their equipment, So if you want to fight with Robb Stark, or you want to fight with Tywin Lannister or something like that, these characters from those games, you can do that. but it's also just a fun game to play. So if you're not a Game of Thrones fan, you don't even care about that. It's just a unique, fun world, a unique, fun fantasy world if you're into it.
Right.
And there are some little campaign elements of it that you can do, but really, like I remember I played one where I was just wanting to play as a knight, and I had a couple guys that I brought with me as squires, and I would just go to tournament to tournament to tournament in different towns and fight. And that was what was fun to me, and then I became a lord for one of the nations, and now I've got a fighting force, and when they go to war or whoever they're fighting, I've got to bring my troops along and, take part in these battles and, eventually become a king, so now you're the king, you create your own kingdom, you carve out your own piece of it, you create your own lords. So there's in the Clash of Kings mod, they adds like, I want to say something like 30 something companions that you can have. Mm-hmm. And these guys are all pretty unique, and you can give them their own castles and their own towns, and then they'll be your lords and knights who will build up their own armies and help you fight and go from place to place. And so that's one I've spent 1,000+ hours on, specifically that mod, specifically that game. And that's just because it was so easy to get lost into it. It's a virtual time machine.
Right.
It is so much fun. The vanilla version, you can trade. You can just take, there's items that don't really have anything to do with the gameplay, but have a value in world that places produce and other places don't. So you can take velvet from one place to another and, have this whole supply chain, meanwhile just weaving in between bandit patrols. Maybe you've got enough troops where you don't get attacked or whatever, but maybe you bring in like a cavalry retinue with you of like 10, 15 guys, and maybe you get attacked, maybe you don't. But it's nice, then you get to pick up their gear and just sell it back. But, I did it one on Xbox on vanilla. So, I played a lot of hours on PC, and I played on the Xbox for a little bit when my PC was down. And the Mount and Blade Warband, that one, I was doing one specifically as a merchant. And I was just going to wait to try to do any Lord stuff until I had earned over 10 million gold, which takes a while. It's not an easy thing to do. And there's no end game. The end game is what you make it.
Gotcha.
So now with that game, you can just hit retire and then you're done. It's when you decide you're done with it. And I kind of like that as well. It is the ultimate sandbox. And now with Mount and Blade Mount and Blade 2, Bannerlord, which is the sequel to it, we're seeing a lot of that as well. There's a little bit more campaign, but I've recently started playing it again on Sandbox, and it is just a blast. And you can play that on Xbox and PlayStation and PC as well. And it adds a lot more strategy things to it. It adds some smithing, which is fun because you can, make some really unique swords and that kind of thing outside of what you could do. But, if you're a Game of Thrones fan at all, which I am, or you like fantasy in general, hop into the Mount and Blade Warband. Your computer can probably handle it. And
I think it came out in 2010.
Yeah, it is a ton of fun. The mods are easy to use, and they make it just the best. And so, I'm a little bit scattered. I'm all over the place. I love real-time strategy. I love RPG. I love first-person shooter, tactical shooters. But, the main thing is I love games. You love games. That's one of the things that we enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So that's my top 10. That's a little bit about me. I've got a couple honorable mentions I'll just throw out there. I'll make them pretty quick. One of them is Airborne Ranger. You've probably never heard of this game before. I probably never even talked to you about it.
No, I don't think so.
It's one of those early games that I played, side scroller, kind of up and down. You get parachuted into behind enemy lines, and then you just got to go up the map, almost like a football field, right? There's different trenches and barricades and bunkers and stuff. And you got to accomplish the mission. You got to kill everybody or blow things up. I remember playing it as a young kid and not being able to do it well. And I remember it being challenging and wanting to play better at it. And it's one of those things that I really enjoyed.
Gotcha. I don't ever recall hearing about that.
It was pretty interesting. Shout out to the Modern Warfare, the Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Yeah, the new the 2019 version, and then the new one that just came out. I mean, the old ones too. Modern Warfare 2 back in the day was pretty good. I agree. That's kind of an honorable mention for me too.
So, we spent a lot of time on Modern Warfare 2 back in the day, a lot of time on it. And to be honest, we spent a lot of time on this 2019 Modern Warfare.
Yeah.
I'm not enjoying the Modern Warfare 2, the most recent one, as much for the Battle Royale.
Right. Warzone.
I like Verdansk better. I liked that feeling better.
Yep.
And, some of the guns and everything on there were a lot more fun. I feel like it was a lot better for me with the 2019 version. But I'm going to keep giving this newest one a chance, and, we're going to keep playing it some and have fun with it. The Command and Conquer series, obviously, all of them, Red Alert, Tiberian Sun, those are all a blast for me on computer, PC, real-time strategy, easy to get into, easy to play, very, what was that game from Blizzard that was also like that?
Shoot, I don't remember.
Very similar, base building, go attack your friends, just like Age of Empires 2, which is another one of my honorable mentions. I had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun doing map building. I had a lot of fun, playing solo. It's one of those ones where multiplayer, if you try to play it outside the meta, you're not going to do it. You're going to get swamped and killed by people that have this very specific thing, which is one of the reasons why I wouldn't do it.
Right.
Because I'm very much a play at my own pace kind of guy.
That makes sense. I think I've seen you. I think you showed me one of the Command and Conquers. Like, I had never played them either, but you showed me one of them a long time ago. I watched you play one a little bit.
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember which one it was, but that was a while ago.
Yeah, those are fun. Those are they're a fun, like, easy to get into, easy to play, easy to get out of, not so serious game. Shout out Skyrim. We talked about that at length last time. Shout out Rainbow Six Vegas 2.
Yep.
Great game. And one of the last games I'll shout out is Ghost Recon Wildlands. Me and you spent a lot of time on that. And we got to play, Barbie doll. We got to dress up our dudes, make them look cool, make them, have fun. And also props to them for a fairly open world campaign where you got to do a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah, that one I would give an honorable mention to as well. Yeah, the customization was awesome in that game. Gameplay was fun, tackling bases and stuff, like either going stealthy or just going in guns blazing kind of thing. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't without a ton of bugs, for sure.
Lots of bugs, lots of janky gameplay, helicopters, planes, cars. I'm looking at you specifically.
Yes.
But, we had some moments in that which were pretty crazy. And I'm going to throw out one more that wasn't even on my list, and that's Generation Zero, because I was just thinking about that recently as well. And, it's a fun game. It's an indie game. If you've got like $10 or whatever, it's worth buying to play with a buddy. It can be scary. Getting hunted by lots and lots of robots is a lot of fun. And the same thing with Ghost Recon Wildlands. Just run. I remember one time Josh and I were running, and the entire map was after us, it seemed like. And it was like a scene out of Lone Survivor. I'm turning around and shooting and throwing mines down, and they wouldn't stop. And
we were running up the side of a mountain, up like a snowy mountain. And like you would get behind a little berm or something, and you look up over, and there was literally like 35 guys running up the mountain after us. And we're just like taking pot shots while keep running away from. Because if we were to actually just head on engage them, we would have for sure died.
We would have, and we got out of that situation. It was a lot of fun.
It was awesome.
A lot of fun. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. That's my top 10. I hope you guys enjoyed listening. I hope you will tell us, like Josh said last week, tell us what you like.
Yeah.
Email us, geeketcpodcast@gmail.com.
Or tweet us at Geek ETC Podcast on Twitter. Send us some of your favorites or thoughts about any of these games, if any of them were any of your favorites. We'd love to hear from you for sure.
Ask us questions. Let us know. We're very interested in what you guys have to say. Obviously top 10s, and we're not necessarily Modern Warfare streamers. We're not like we're not ducking and diving and spin shotting and doing all that stuff. But we're here for the long haul, and we wanna hear from you guys.
Yeah, our main strat in games is to have fun.
And that's what we want you to do too.
Even if it's annoying to somebody else, if we're having fun, that's what matters at the end of the day, because it's a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Just remember, follow us at Geek ETC Podcast, Instagram, Twitter, and send us an email at geeketcpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. And as always, Keep geeking out.